Hey friends, welcome to the Entrusted to Lead podcast. I'm your host, Danita Cummins, and today on this episode, I'm joined in the studio with Amy Kemp. She's an author and a habit finder coach, and she helps business leaders and professionals help to understand how deeply their thought habits impact every part of their work and their lives. She's coming on to talk about her new book, and we're super excited to have her on the show. So I hope you enjoy today's conversation. Grab a cup of coffee or your favorite beverage, and let's get started. Doing things alone is entirely overrated. We all need a community to thrive. And that's why I'm part of an online community of writers and speakers, podcasters, and entrepreneurs called Creatives. And I love it. In the years since I joined this community, I've launched new ideas and I finally executed the dreams that sat on the shelf for years. Seriously. And I was able to do this because of the outstanding group of mentors, exceptional training, and encouraging mastermind groups with my new friends who did and continue to give me invaluable feedback. Oh, and not to mention all the fun, because we have had lots and lots of fun. Have you ever said, I want to write a book? Or do you want to use your voice for the exciting world of podcasting? If so, Called Creatives is your best resource for up-to-the-minute industry training, expert advice, live coaching, and peer support like no other. Best-selling authors and speakers Allie Worthington and Lisa Whittle lead this community with a no-competition mission, and it shows. So join my friends and I in the Called Creative community. Head to my show notes, danitacummins.com/podcast, and click the link to get all the details to join. I promise you won't regret it. I look forward to seeing you in the community and watching you grow. Hey friends, welcome to the Entrusted to Lead podcast. I'm your host, Danita Cummins, and today I'm joined by Amy Kemp. She is a certified habit finder coach and an author of her new book, I See You, a guide for women to make more, to have more, and to be more without more work, which I love. It launches today, February 29th, so we're super excited to have her come on the show today and talk about her heart and her passion for leadership, and also to talk about her new book. So Amy, thanks for coming on the show today. How are you?
Oh, I'm so good. I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that we got to connect. So the first question I have for you is, you are a habit finder coach, which we talked a little bit about before, and you work with business leaders and professionals to help them understand their thought habits and how that impacts our daily life. So can you tell us a little bit about how you came to serve in that space and why you think that our thought habits are so important?
I would love to. Something I'm so passionate about. I am an entrepreneur myself. After a short stint as a high school English teacher, I dove into the world of owning my own business and have really done that for the last 20 to 25-ish years full time. And along the way, I grew to understand the importance of investing in growing me and invested in I always say there are very few people I know who have invested more time, energy, and money than I have in coaching, education, just learning about myself and the things that make me tick. So along the way, I encountered through a mutual friend, a habit finder coach, and I was really skeptical of another thing that was going to change my life.
Right.
But somehow in our conversation, this coach and I connected in a way that led me to say yes to working with him. And we worked together for 3 years, during which my business experienced the greatest, most significant amount of growth. And what was interesting was through that 3 years, he wasn't coaching me on business strategies or what I should be doing. He was coaching me on all of the subconscious habits of thinking that were tripping me up and draining energy that I really could direct toward more growth-focused efforts. Things like taking too much responsibility for the outcomes of the people that I led.
Yeah.
Or a lot of perfectionistic kind of not being able to move forward until I knew every single step, instead of just taking the step and then letting the next step unfold and the next step. But a lot of those things he was working with me on. And so it just became easier to create. There was less resistance. Fast forward, I don't know if you've ever had this happen. Most people have, but there was a stretch of time where every person I talked to, podcast I listened to, sermon I heard at church, there was this message saying, you need to work with women outside of your business that I was running at that time and growing at that time. And I just felt like that was ridiculous. I mean, my kids were really busy at that time. My business was enormous. It was a lot just to manage it.
Right.
I maxed out the number of hours I could work, and yet there was just this repeated message. I was in Salt Lake City speaking at an event. That coach that I worked with lives in Salt Lake City, serendipitously, right?
Right.
And we met for dinner. He picked me up from the airport. I said, I'm going to be in town. I'd love to see you. And so we met for dinner. I told him about this repeating message. And he said, I really think you need to take action on it. And next breath, we are starting a training on Monday for new habit finder coaches.
Oh, wow.
When I say I had never, ever, ever thought of doing that,
Right.
I really mean it. And yet it just felt so logical to me. It felt so the next step. So I went home, talked it over with my husband, who I share this in the book, but said, every time we've invested in you, it's been worth it.
Oh,
pause for the
so
gratitude.
That's
for
right.
the very confident, grounded, supportive spouse. So on Monday, off I went, and it's unfolded. Oh, when I say I'm so glad I did not have a long-term strategic business plan, I am so glad, because I would have vastly undersold myself.
Yeah. Right.
I had no idea how needed this work was. I had no idea how much passion it would stoke in me. And so now it's my full-time work, and I work with women in small groups of 8 to 10. And then I work with clients one-on-one using an assessment tool called the Habit Finder and the curriculum that goes along with it to help them identify and replace the unhealthy habits of thinking that are holding them back.
I think that's that's so good. I know. There you go. There was a podcast. Have a nice day. Yeah. Thanks, Amy, for coming. Oh my gosh. I think it's so powerful because I'm a business coach and a consultant, more consulting than business coaching, but I work in bivocational ministry. I've done that for several years. So the fact that you're coming alongside someone and you're helping them unwrap their thoughts and the impact of those is so deep. I would imagine, right? Just a little bit I know, the deep work that you are doing with each individual person, but the depth of the impact of that, I don't think people really probably fully understand that. Like you're saying, once you got in and you saw the power of it for you, and then you're like, no, this is where the core, other than faith, right? But this is your mindset. It's with you all day long. It never ends.
It's affecting every interaction you have.
Yeah. I think it's powerful.
Our thoughts aren't us. It's not like our identity or our personality or anything like that. They're just things. They're just up there swirling around.
Yeah.
But they are affecting us so much.
Yeah.
Can I tell you a really fun story that just happened this morning about this work? Yes. First, I consider it to be sacred. Holding space for people so that they can do this kind of work. I feel so humbled. I can get real teary about this quickly. Honored, just absolutely astonished that I get to do that I get to create this space. So I got this message this morning from a client, and it was a screenshot, and I'll hold it up, but I'll read it, or I'll say it since I know most people are listening. It just says $150,510.48. And it's a screenshot of the calculator on your iPhone.
Right.
This client was working in a toxic environment, working way too many hours. She's exceptional at what she does, and was making probably half that when we started.
Wow.
She is now working 3.5 days a week, picking her kids up from school every day, and doubled her income.
Wow.
And she was like, I didn't believe you. I didn't believe you.
And is that her
I did it.
Yeah.
And Something really like there just aren't a lot of people she can tell that to, one. But like
Yeah,
I get to be that person and I get to walk along the journey as one, she advocated for herself and demanded that she got paid what she was worth.
that's right.
Two, that she asked a traditional work structure to sort of bend and flex so that her priorities could be taken into account.
Yeah,
And three, that she gets paid what she's worth. She's worth even more than that, but she's getting there. Like it's
right.
so cool.
Yeah,
So
that,
that's
yes.
amazing.
No, you're good. I'm so glad that you got to share. And I think we can get lost in the dollars, right? Real fast. We could do that. Like you're saying, get lost in the dollars. My husband and I go back and forth in different seasons of our life where we have seasons of plenty, where we have had seasons of drought. And, we go through that season of plenty. Maybe like what we talked about right before we started recording about you're like, okay, I'm in a season of abundance. So how do I sit in the season of abundance with a grateful heart? Right? With humility still and grace still and wisdom and discernment still. Like, okay, my hands have been opened and maybe they were empty and now they're full. I still trust you. I still trust provision is, that will be, but it is a different perspective. And I think that we can get caught in the dollars, but it's not really, if I'm, hearing what you're saying, it's not about the money, but it is about value. Money's a resource, right? Food, clothing, shelter. We all have to have it. And there's a freedom in, just candidly, there's a freedom when you have money and you don't have to worry about food, clothing, shelter, your ability to serve others, you'll be able to make a bigger impact. And I don't think that that's greedy. That's at least my husband and I, we walk through that mindset, the mindset of money, right? That's a whole mindset, I'm sure.
What's interesting is that I can hear you even coaching yourself through
Oh.
it out loud, right? Like it's not for most women, it's not our default to receive abundantly.
Yeah.
We have lots of mixed messaging about that.
That's fair.
And that there's got to be either a sacrifice of I'm not prioritizing the things that are most important,
Yes.
or that is selfish because if I get more, someone else doesn't. And I see this beautiful blend of like, there is a movement of money when you allow it to come to you in greater quantities
Yeah.
and you start to understand your value. And like you kind of alluded to, I never thought about money more than when we didn't have enough.
Right.
And I was giving so much of my power away to money to make me feel safe and secure
That's right.
instead of just letting money move.
Yeah.
Letting it move, watching it move, being delighted when it moves toward me, celebrating giving it away, but also celebrating when it moves toward me in larger quantities and just not being attached to it so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. That's very
I could
powerful.
talk for 8 hours just about money.
But that's so important because I think I work, like I work in ministry in an outreach center. So we do, food, clothing, shelter. Those are the first three things we say. Do you have a house? Do you have food? Can you take care of yourself? And then can you take care of this baby that's coming? Because it's a pregnancy center. So it's all the things. So we talk about money all the time in the different ways that mindset, culture, faith have like influenced those things. And majority of our clients are all women. We do have some men, but the majority of them are moms or single moms. And it is trying to help her see herself in that space and not, I don't know, get stuck, like you said, like her mindset. Yeah, that's so good. So you're launching a new book. It's super exciting. How's the book launch going? How's it going? All the leading up to, I guess it never ends, but how's it going?
I just had a meeting with my publishing team this week, and everyone sort of gives you these horror stories like you're going to be so stressed and it's going to be so busy.
Yeah.
But I am just choosing a different path.
Good.
I don't want to be stressed. My husband is the varsity basketball coach, and I have a senior in high school right now. I won't miss it.
Yeah.
And I also believe that I can have a phenomenal launch both. So I'm choosing to think of it creatively, which I've always done because I've always had limitations on, how many hours I could work because I had to go pick up kids right. I've always had to just think about like, how could I create just as much with a lesser investment of time?
Yeah.
And keeping these priorities straight. So I'm choosing the launch to be that way. And it is unfolding that way, which has been amazing. The response already in just the pre-order season has been astonishingly great. And more than that, I have a group of advanced readers who are currently reading the book. So this is crazy when you work on something for so many years and no one reads it, right? Then
Right.
all of a sudden people are reading it, and it's been a really magical, beautiful thing to actually start to get feedback
Yeah.
and to see how it's impacting them and what's resonating, and
Mm.
just to receive some of that feels good as a creator after I've been, heads down in it for so long. So it's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
That's so very cool. So, as a fellow author friend or whatever, I know that book titles can be like somewhat of a tenuous adventure when you're trying to pick the right one. So, what inspired you to pick the title of the book that you have?
I fought for this title
Yeah.
because the book cover has me on it. And while I'm not hiding from the fact that I'm central to the creation, this book is not about me being like an expert coming in with some sort of 5 quick tips or
Right. Right. Yeah.
my reader doesn't need that. I don't have that. What I offer is something a little different, which is just that I really see and understand my reader.
Mhm.
And so the story was inspired. Can I tell you the story about
Yeah.
it?
Go ahead. Yes.
So I was at a community event and I met through a mutual friend, this woman, and it was really quick interaction. But I was, when you feel kind of drawn to someone when you meet them the first
Yeah.
time. And so I reached out to her and said, I'd love to have coffee. And so we met. And for an hour, I just listened to her story. And she is a woman who sits at some important tables in our community. She is a well-known leader. She has kids and is active in their lives and in, that world as well. About 55 minutes into the conversation, she abruptly looks up and says to me, "Why did you invite me to coffee?" And I kind of, it was just like, oh, and I said, the first thing that came to my mind, I looked her in the eye and I said, "Because I see you."
Oh,
And she started to weep, like I mean, put her head down, and for a long time, like she just cried. And then she kind of sat up and she wiped her eyes off and she collected herself and she said, "Thank you. So few people do." And so that's my reader. Like
yeah.
everyone sees her all the time, but they don't really see her.
Yeah.
Or she can't really, in most of those places, be what's happening inside. She has to be in charge and,
That's right.
mom and wife and community leader. And it's inappropriate for her in most of those spaces to really be seen in her rawness, but she needs that space still.
Yeah.
So,
That's very powerful. That's very powerful. I've been sitting in the ICU, or that the Lord sees us space, for the last few weeks in a very deep way. So, yeah, I think there's great power. I believe there's, other than having purpose or meaning, in our life and finding that thing that gives us hope, we want one person in the world to see us and all of our mess and to all of our quirkiness and in all of our, faults, and to love us still, and to be seen by one other person in the world is huge, right? If you just one other person can see you. So I think there's power, great power we don't understand in that one statement. So thank you for sharing, and thanks for sharing her story. We talk about boundaries and mindset. For me, I think boundaries, mindset, and emotional intelligence, other than faith, are like my most 3 favorite leadership elements, right? If I were to pull them all together, no matter what sphere I'm leading or serving in, these repetitive things come up all the time, right? If I'm helping my kids navigate a relationship at school, we talk about healthy boundaries. Or if I'm helping, my CEO of my company who's like trying to have authority versus influence, and, government contracts, when we negotiate, we were just talking about it yesterday at work, like there needs to be boundaries in this contract, because if not, people will, so you talk about having boundaries with goals, or to have boundaries between your ideas and yourself. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, and what does that mean?
I would love to. And I'm passionately hoping that we don't get like fatigued of talking about boundaries
Yeah.
because no relationship can be healthy without them. I think we understand that more. We have more language for that than ever before in our interpersonal relationships. The spaces where I see it missing are with our ideas and then with our goals. So I'll start with goals because I see this happen a lot with women where they maybe go to an event or they become inspired by an idea and they are
That's right.
overcome with the deep burning fire of ambition, which I love inside of them, right? I have it
Yeah.
too. Sometimes it feels like a burden, but it's never gone out yet. So I'm just embracing it and going with it. And we tend to set these huge goals with no boundaries,
Yeah.
meaning we don't take into account I'm a caregiver for my elderly parents. I
Yes.
have a child who's a senior in high school and
That's right.
I want to be there right now for him. He'll be gone
Yeah.
next year. Or I have a child who needs extra help in school. And so I know that that takes an hour or 2 hours every night of my energy and time. Even things like we don't take into account, and we'll talk about this a little later, but all the unpaid labor that we do as women. And we just set the big goal
Yeah.
without taking any of that into account. And so I think it's important to put those boundaries on our goals. And I'll give you an example of mine that will kind of maybe clarify what I mean by that. So my goal is, I always say, to work like a teacher, clarify, to work like a healthy teacher, meaning I work from 8 to 3:30 Monday through Friday. I have my weekends off. I take breaks off when the kids are off of school. And then summers, I still work, but very light. It's less, way less.
Yeah.
So for example, my groups run like school semesters on purpose. So I want to work
Okay.
like a teacher and get paid like a CEO.
Nice. Okay.
So again, I could just say I want to get paid like a CEO. Same with my client that I just shared, right? But without the boundary of working 3.5 to 4 days a week, you just can get swallowed by the goal.
Right.
And so there has to be I want to increase my income by $20,000 this year and take Fridays off to be with my mom at the nursing home.
Yeah.
Or that kind of goal setting. One, it causes us to come up with really creative solutions when we
Right.
run into, it also
Yeah.
helps us to make decisions about whether we say yes or no to something right now, because
Yeah.
does it fit within that boundary? So this is in the book also, but there was a woman I met and we went through her habit finder assessment that she had taken. And she was like my ideal client. I mean, she was my people, I could and
Yeah.
we had this really rich, meaningful conversation. And then she was really ready to get started in a one-on-one capacity. And she said, okay, so the only time I can meet is like after 5 p.m.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, and I just said, I'm going to think about this and then I'm going to talk to you tomorrow, because I knew I couldn't make a decision in the moment that would be wise. So I waited. Right. And then the next day I just said, if I say yes, I am literally undermining the integrity of everything that I am here to serve you with. And so I just can't do it.
Oh.
And it was both sad because I loved her in such a short period of time and because it was a loss of income. But I believe that in ways that I don't even know or can recognize was multiplied and like given back to me because I honored the boundary that I had set.
Yeah.
Plus, I could stand in the integrity of what I'm teaching people. I can't do it. I can't do it if I can't live it. So,
Wow.
yeah.
I think that's so important because I see that too. I see that where I work with or someone who maybe wants to launch a new business or they have a business, right? And they want to change or start a new program or product or whatever. So I work with them in that space. And then I do work on the, like the defense tech side with startups and small businesses. And that is a very common theme too, right? Because when we start to talk about the ideas and they're like, well, I have all these ideas. And I feel like there's we talk about visionary leaders and we talk about that being a strength. And so you can cast a vision and you see big and you see broad and that kind of stuff. But then I try to work with them to say, okay, but within this visionary mindset, you still have to have structure and boundaries, right? Because I get it that every single idea that pops up is a potential business opportunity. But before you know it, you're running after 75 different things. One, your company doesn't know where they're going. The people are confused, and you're exhausted because you spread yourself so thin. So I love
Yeah.
that you take a interpersonal relationship thing like boundaries, like you're saying,
Mm.
like I teach people how to treat me, all those things, and then put it in the context of, okay, it's okay to have goals or ideas. I love that you said thoughts are, I say clouds. I think I heard that once or a sermon or something, but I tell my kids that for years. I'm like, thoughts are clouds. They come and they go. You
Yeah.
choose which one you grab and hold on to, but let's just let 90% of them just float right by, and don't hold them. Yeah. And
Mm.
so, do you in your coaching business then help people go through the Habit Finders assessment and then figure out what, all that looks like, and then help them kind of sort through that, for lack of a better word, like so you have 50 things on your to-do list or idea list. And then is that part of your coaching where you help them to kind of get
Yeah.
clarity?
Even so, a lot of times they will come to that clarity on their
Mm,
own once they've
yeah.
started working on the habits of thinking that are interfering and causing them to be fantastical or unrealistic about what they can actually accomplish in the time that they have and the
Yes.
energy that they have to really see it through. I think the other space, the idea space right now is very pertinent because one of the things when people struggle with damaged self-esteem is that they get very attached to their ideas,
Mm,
and it's very difficult for them to receive feedback about their ideas and beliefs without it feeling very personal. So
mm,
I'll tell you a story about this that did not actually happen, but I created it as an example in the book. My husband works at our high school and he is an assistant principal. He's kind of a very systematic, he's an operations thinker. And so
sure.
the bus lanes at the school have been driving him crazy for years. The way that they do it, he thinks it's inefficient and it's a little dangerous because people are walking around. And anyhow, I imagined him walking into the leadership team meeting with this idea of how to fix the bus lanes. And if he's attached to his idea and he has no boundary between himself and the idea, it's almost as if the idea is he's holding it like against his
Mm,
chest. And with his 6'5" body, he climbs up on the board table, sits in the
right.
middle with his idea and explains it to people. And then when people start to say, well, but if you do that, then the buses are going to be backed up onto North Street, causing a backup of traffic. Those pokes and prods at the idea feel like pokes and prods at him.
Right.
And it's very difficult for him to receive feedback on the idea. He gets defensive, he goes fight or flight, or even just internally, it hurts. Like it feels like a personal attack.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. The alternate, like the opposite or the different way that you could approach it is he's got the idea in his backpack. He walks into the same boardroom. He sits down at a chair with everyone else around the table. He pulls the idea out of the backpack and puts it on the table.
Yeah.
And it's away from him and it's out in front of him. And then the team can say, oh, that's an interesting idea. And they can kind of poke and prod and move and change and they can do all of that work without it feeling like they're attacking him.
Yeah.
But we know just from the Habit Finder research that 98% of people have trouble separating themselves from their ideas.
Wow.
So when that happens, we get into these personal, all of
Yeah.
these. If we did have clouds that you could read, there would be a
Right.
lot that would be happening.
Yeah. Like,
So
ah.
that's,
Yeah.
it's a boundary because it's like, I'm not that idea. That's not me. There's a boundary between me and that idea. And when that happens, we all can just look at the idea together and
Yeah.
no one taking it personally. So,
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing, like while you were talking about your husband, like in the first approach where he's holding onto it, sitting in the table. I thought the same thing too, while you're talking. I was like, or he could just lay it on the table and it could just be an independent thing. And yeah, but you're right to separate that idea from your identity. And if it's received well, and then you receive positive feedback and affirmation, it's received negatively, then you internalize that and, something's wrong with you. Like, yeah, I can see how that's so powerful of
Well,
just,
you can see how it's playing out in our world too.
yes. Yeah.
People are walking around with all of these ideas and beliefs, and they're holding them so closely that it's creating barriers and boundaries instead of connections and bridges between people. So,
Yeah. No, I think that's very powerful. And I think that it's a really good perspective. And like you said, important. And I think you could see it, like you said, not just play out with work or business ideas or starting coaching or whatever, but you can see it across social media and all the things that we see every day. Do you want to talk a little bit about the boundary spectrum and what that is and where that concept came from?
Yeah. Okay. This is another kind of thing I learned from my clients. Writing this book has been such a co-creation. I learned so much from the people I'm working with, but I observed and observed and observed this pattern that so many times that I put words to it and kind of a framework around it. And it was that there were these women I was working with who at work were just large and in charge, like beasts in the boardroom, so to speak,
Sure.
in quotation marks. But, I'm in charge, fiercely independent. I make all the hard decisions. I'm going to get this done. They're just bulldozers.
Right.
And then they would come home, and whether they were in an unhealthy marriage or partnership, or they had a kid that was walking all over them or whatever, all of a sudden they were like a doormat. And what I realized is that the boundary spectrum is a line. On one end of it is no boundaries. So that's what they were experiencing at home. No boundaries,
Right.
just allowing mistreatment, allowing things to be done in their home that did not make them feel safe or seen, or that were not okay, frankly, right? Allowing
Right.
no
Right.
boundaries. And then over here on the opposite end of the spectrum are walls, really high, thick walls. If you can imagine if that was like an iron rod and you took the two ends and sort of bent them together, what I realized is that the experience of living with no boundaries and thick walls was really the same.
Wow.
Because behind the thick walls or the no boundaries is isolation, resentment, frustration, exhaustion, overwhelm. You experience both of those things, that actually at the source of it is this lack of boundaries.
Yeah.
Because I can't let you in. I can't let you in. I have to be walled up to be safe, right?
Right.
Or I have no boundaries, so everything comes in.
Right.
And
Yeah.
equally unsafe.
Wow.
And so just working with what's the middle ground? How do we establish a boundary that allows the appropriate things in, things that are beneficial and helpful, and then keep out the things that are harmful and not okay and painful or hurtful or just inappropriate even?
Right. I think that's so important. I have struggled for years on this accountability and the actual act of accountability, the action of accountability, right? Because we talk about accountability all the time, but how do I actively hold someone accountable for certain things? And I worked for a long time in defense contracts and a lot of, contract legal stuff. So it was always like, these are the terms and conditions of the contract. You didn't meet the terms and conditions. Now we have to go through mediation. We have to go through all of these things, right? So there's a very black and white, line of accountability. But then there's also this big gray area, And so as you were speaking, I thought through that too, it's boundaries and then there is an accountability. So you can be in the boardroom or you could be at work and you could have this very tough, rigid, line. And like you're saying, and then there is still a necessity to have boundaries and to have accountability and to have that, but do it in a way that gives life and empowers and trusts, all the things, so it's not super hyper micromanagement.
In that kind of work, what's the gray? What's the gray area? Is it just in the nuances of the contracts and the how it
But
affects.
it's more so like, I'll give you for an example. So I have contractor that's been hired to come in and perform a service, right? They're going to do project or program management for a government entity. But the government hasn't really clearly defined like every single executable thing with measurable thresholds and objectives that they want that person to perform. Either they don't know because they're not doing it because they don't actually know how to do it. So that's why they bring in a contractor. Or there are some contracts where the evaluation criteria are best value, which is very subjective, right? Best value. So it's like, how do you quantify best value? So you have to kind of make up these arbitrary performance specifications or measures of success and then sit it there. And so then it is up to interpretation. And that's where a lot more of it is. It's like, it's not a blatant, you have to come to work every day, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. If you're at 8:01, you're late. It's more like, we hired you to come in and provide this system. And the system is like not really working exactly the way we thought that it was supposed to, but we didn't write that in the contract. So now it's almost a he said, she said. The contract doesn't say, so technically you're not in violation of the contract, but one or both parties are not happy. And we don't know why.
A blend of, in the Habit Finder, we call that systemic thinking, is black and white, right or wrong, all or nothing. It's very clear and rigid and whatever. And then there's another space that is relational, and there's a lot of nuance, and there's a lot of gray. And there's, when we apply systemic thinking to systems, it works really well. Like, I want, my engineer to use systemic thinking because I want it to be right. I want my brain surgeon to be right.
Right. Yeah.
When we apply systemic thinking to relational spaces, it almost always causes harm and damage to relationships.
Yeah.
And so, but it's kind of similar. My husband does discipline at the high school, and people think that's real black and white. Yeah. It's very gray.
Yeah. It's like parenting, there's not like, you have 3 children and each one of them has everything so different. So, and then the oldest is like, you like them more than me. And you're like, no, it's just because they're different. So we have to approach the problem solution, equation different for this one than that one. Yeah. I think that's what we do a lot, at least on the pregnancy center side. Each client that comes in, we have a model for like these 4 bins, and then everything else is just this fluid thing. But I think it goes back to, like you were saying before, which I love what you're doing, and I'm super excited about the book. It's just really going back to that, like, what do you value? Right. And getting clear on that. So that's a lot of like heart, mind work, that stuff. And then once you define what you value or what you want to hold in a place of value, then putting those boundaries and conditions in place in order to be able to do that. And then I love the part that you're talking about changing your mindset, that it's not just like even something as a traditional work schedule, right? Or in the office, out of the office, like hybrid. Like there's so many different ways that we can still accomplish the things that we want to accomplish. Like we can still hold place or space for these things that we value. And there is a model to do that, right? Like, but it does force you have to, like you said, change your thought process and really be open. Yeah. So when we talked about a little bit before, we talk about unpaid labor and how that's really a big deal. So can you explain what that is, and then the impact that has specifically on women and what that looks like?
Absolutely. I think I'll start by saying that when most women enter the workforce, and most of us do now, we encounter a world that was not created for us. The structures of the traditional work world were not created with women in mind. And that's just factual, right? Like through our history, there was a time when this model of work was made because women were at home doing all of the unpaid labor while men left the home and went to work. For most families at a particular period of time. We know that that doesn't exist anymore. Most women, even just factually, are out working outside of the home at this point. And then we also have a higher percentage of single parent homes where, of course, the parent is working because they have to. What has happened is that shift happened. Women went back to work or went to work. But what didn't happen was that there was a redistribution of all of the unpaid labor that women were doing, or even the expectation of who should do it.
Right.
And so women have entered the workforce while also keeping all of the responsibility for the unpaid labor. Even for me, I don't do all of the unpaid labor in our home, but I manage it all.
Right.
Like I'm the one who hired the cleaning people. I'm the one who figures out if I need help with someone helping with laundry or food prep or errands or whatever. My husband isn't giving 2 seconds of thought to who's buying the birthday gifts.
Right. That's
I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah.
he has no idea. Like
Yeah.
Christmas Eve, he's saying, what did we get for everyone? I mean, it's
Aw.
just, and again, he will help if I ask him. He's super hands on in our house with dishes and laundry and all of that, but I'm overseeing it.
Right.
And so I'll tell you also, a lot of it I want to. I want to do the gifts. I don't want him to buy the gifts. I don't really think he would do a very good job.
Yeah.
There are things where I'm not saying that in a way like he doesn't help me with anything. I'm saying, yeah, I've taken this on and I want to.
Right.
I actually enjoy some of the things that I do. So, all that to say, however, we then wonder why we aren't getting the promotion, why we aren't making the progress we want, why we aren't selling as many widgets, why we aren't. Well, there's only so much energy. And if an allotment of it is going toward running this massive enterprise of our home,
Yeah.
there's only so much of us. And so that's not to say that we can't do both. It's to say, be honest about how much energy you want to spend doing unpaid labor. Unpaid labor is exceptionally valuable. It is the fabric of a lot of our communities, and it does a lot of the caretaking and a lot of the things that hold families together. So I'm also not saying it's not valuable.
Right.
We don't get paid for it.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother thing, right?
Right.
But it's not valued in our economy as much, I would say. But I just want to challenge women always to recognize there's nothing wrong with you that maybe what takes your male counterpart 1 year to accomplish takes you 5. Perhaps you were giving birth to and getting a tiny human up to age 2, which is literally one of the most colossal
Right.
givings of energy in human history, right? Like to give birth and then to care for a baby. It is not just physically draining, but it's like unbelievably emotionally taxing
Right.
as well. And
Right.
spiritually, right? Like we have this whole parenting instinct that takes over. And so I just want to be compassionate and loving in our acknowledgement of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so important. And I do work with different people in different seasons too, and have the same conversation when we talk about work-life balance, right? And I think sometimes that's a misunderstanding or misinterpretation. I've had some women and friends and family members who, kind of maybe work their way up through the corporate ladder and, corporate America and are mentoring junior women. And they ask that question, and I've had that question asked to me, especially as I have women who are in different companies and they're just now becoming moms, right? And because, I'm older than them and they're asking, well, how do you do these things? How do you balance all the things? And I'm like, you don't have 10 equal bins on your desk and each one gets the exact same amount on Tuesday. That's not how life works. And I've had several people ask me in my life or mentoring calls and things with veterans or transitioning veterans. And they are like, well, your career looks like it's very successful, blah, blah, blah. How did you do that? And it was literally like, I was taking care of family. I was in the military and then I had to get out because we had a baby. And it was very much a decision. There was no 10 years, 20, 40-year strategy. It was all, who's the person in front of me today that needs the most? And it was, can you give or do I give? And that's really been, that's just been the thing. And there is a journey, I think, from the mindset part where I see I think you have to get to that place. Maybe you don't have to, but the resentfulness of that is a piece that I see that is not healthy, right? It's okay to feel it or feel that, but carrying that resentfulness, you can't do that. Right. And I think that's another part I try to help people see. If it's grieving, you need to grieve a loss of a perception of what you thought you were going to do or where you thought you were going to be, then that's healthy. Go do that. Right.
Yeah.
But don't carry that, piece of it.
Resentment always is like a flashing neon sign of a missing boundary.
Mm.
you're not advocating for what you need or communicating what you need, then you feel resentful.
Wow. Yeah. That's so good.
Right.
Yeah. I'm
So
going to write
it's
that
like,
down.
it's really powerful, but it's true. Whenever I feel resentment, it's because I'm not protecting my needs. I'm not communicating my needs. Or for me, my gifts are not in the areas of unpaid labor. I'm
Yeah.
not a caretaker. I don't
Right.
enjoy it. It is the most draining thing in the entire world
Yeah.
to me, right?
Really. Yeah.
So it is not my gift. My gift is very much in like building businesses, strategy. That's where I get my energy. So
Mm-hmm.
I have learned that I have to have more help. I have to
Right.
have more help. I have to pay more people to support me. I have an entire support team of people to help so that I can use my God given gifts in this space, right? It would be absolutely me not stewarding what I've been given to try to be
Right.
staying home all day caretaking,
Yeah.
right? But I have a really good friend who could say the complete opposite. She would not be stewarding her gifts if she was leaving her home and going to work for someone else every day. She is a caretaker, right? And that
Right.
it is like her thing. So
Yeah.
again, I think it's more about knowing who you are,
Mm-hmm.
asking for help in the ways and spaces where you need it, and
Yeah.
not beating yourself up about it.
Yeah. No, I think that was really good. That was going to be my next question about how do we navigate and manage the weight of it. But I think like what you said is really key is learning yourself, right? And understanding that and then asking for help and
Paying other women so they can support themselves to do the unpaid labor
right.
versus trying to do it all and killing yourself in the process. I write about my friend Erica in the book who owns a cleaning business and has like 10 women who work for her, all who can work flexible hours, all who earn great income doing that, cleaning people's homes. And it's helping the women whose homes are being cleaned. It's a
Right.
win, 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 right? Like they have a flexible schedule. They can work when they want to. Many of them have small children and don't want to work full time. She's building a great business and supporting her family. And I'm not exhausted, overwhelmed, and resentful.
Right.
So let's celebrate that exchange and build that economy. Everyone can win when we distribute this unpaid labor more fairly. I
Yeah.
also talk a lot about just with kids, like, I want my kids to have responsibility. I don't want to nag them because that feels more draining to me. So mine was always my daughter got paid to do the laundry because I don't want her to expect that she's going to be doing that without getting paid, right? However, I'm not nagging you. If you don't do it, I'm just not Venmoing you the money for that week, right?
Right.
And I don't care. It's up to you, right? But this is
Right.
the exchange.
That's right.
You do and put away the laundry on the weekend. I give you this amount of dollars and I transfer it via Venmo. And the first time she didn't do it, I wish I would have recorded the conversation. It was comical. But the same thing, with my son, there are things where he gets paid to do them to distribute that unpaid labor that
Yeah.
is important in running your home so that not just you are doing it as the woman
Yeah.
traditionally.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. I can totally appreciate that, having been, all the different seasons of our life, the same thing too. And it's interesting. So like I actually, in our family, my husband does buy all the gifts because I'm a horrible gift buyer. But to your point, he does all those things. And then I do all the like manage all the finances and do all the bills and manage the investments and look at where all the money's going. And then, like it's
Yeah.
interesting because when we sit down in spaces of these, even the traditional roles or what you would have, we have worked really hard to try to say, this isn't my gifting for the good of this family or for the good of the team. It makes more sense for you to do this one and I'll do this one, and I think that's very healthy too. Yeah. Like you're saying.
Then like he's enjoying what he's doing and you're enjoying what you're doing
Yeah.
more than
Yes.
hating it.
Being super stressed out. Yes. And crying
Yeah.
and Christmas morning. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, that's funny. So if we look back on your writing journey, so I'm navigating my first year of writing. How do you think that your writing journey has changed you? Do you think there's
You writing right now?
Yes, my manuscript is back from the editor first round. So I've gotten 40 pages into her edits. So I'll be finishing up, hopefully, her edits and giving them back to her for second round edits. And then it'll go to the publisher. Yeah. So then we're off to the races.
Do you find it to be one of the most vulnerable experiences of your life or no?
I do. And I thought I would write a book about purpose, which is so easy. And that's such a lie. I laugh.
What's a lie that it's easy?
That it was easy, that it was an easy topic. Yes. It was like, I'll just write a book about purpose and what the Christian pursuit of purpose. It evolves. I'm sure like your book. Did your book evolve over time as you were writing it? Or did you already know like, this is exactly what I'm going to write? Or was it
No,
an
I think
adventure?
every creative endeavor doesn't end up being what you thought it would be when you start,
Yeah,
right?
that's exactly right. Yeah.
The great irony is that that's a lot of times what we don't start because we don't know how it's going to end up. But it's like, even if you think you do, it doesn't end up like that anyhow.
No.
So you might as well just start.
Or who you will be when you get to the other side of it.
Yeah. What I have felt through the process of this is the volume of noise in my head would fluctuate. Who knows, based on fatigue, hormones, the day of the week, I don't know, right? But
Right.
there is a volume of noise that you bring along with you in any creative pursuit that is your constant companion. And I grew to just accept that it would be there along for the ride instead of resisting it or seeing it as a sign that I should retreat or give up or not pursue this.
Yeah.
It became like, background music in a store.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I knew it was there. If I got really spooked by it, I grounded myself in the eyes of my ideal reader because I know her. Then I would have such clarity. My writing coach says that you don't write books about things, you write them for people. And so when it got really noisy, if I grounded myself in the people, then the noise subsided and I was able to continue forward.
Yeah.
But this particular book, without question, is the most vulnerable thing I've ever done in terms of just having the audacity to even think someone would read it, right? There's all of that.
Yes.
And the logistics of doing it, and then the feedback loop that will come as a result of it. I mean, when I say mad respect for anyone who's ever put words on a page and put them into the world, I instantly honor you.
That's right. Yes, I am the same way too. I think after the first day of writing, starting to write the first chapter, I had my book coach. We had worked on my thing. And so I was like, okay, day one of writing, right? And I was like, it's like Captain's log, start date number 1, I wrote and it was just this absolute, like you said, thoughts and energy. I was so much stuff. I finally got done at the day and I remember I just curled up in my floor in my bedroom in the sunshine and laid in kind of like a little half moon. And I just laid there and I was just like, oh, this is so hard. It's so hard. And that was pretty much the journey. There were seasons of great clarity, and then there were seasons of I don't even know, and there were seasons of crying, and there were seasons of all the things, insecurity, and I can't do it. And I think that's the other thing too I advocate for, like you're with your coaching, right? Because if we stay in our own mindset, then so many things, we get stuck in so many thoughts that aren't true or limiting beliefs. And I'm very thankful
that we both brought someone along to guide us.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done that on my own. And my instinct when I get stuck or paralyzed and I want to move something forward is, thankfully, I probably learned this from really great parents, but is to reach out and bring in an expert or to hire someone or to partner with someone, not to give up, but like, okay, I need to call in the reinforcements here. So definitely was a collaborative experience. And the interesting thing too is there's like the writing, but then there's the publishing, right? The editing, publishing, and then there's like the promoting. the selling yourself. So each has its own sort of thing. It reminds me a lot of being pregnant and then like having a baby and how it keeps changing and how it's not really what you thought it was going to be. And each one was different. And, but it reminds me of that. Like I'm literally 9 months pregnant right now. I'm so over being pregnant.
That's fair. I've heard that before.
Like there are sleepless nights ahead, or, that there's a new season coming that will be different and offer different challenges.
Yeah.
And it'll continue to evolve and different joys and different like celebrations and, different cool things too. So it reminds me a lot of that birthing process.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. That's so good. Well, if anybody wants to reach out to you, how do they connect and where can they grab a copy of the book?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love for you to go to amykemp.com for everything. Okay. amykemp.com is easy to remember, and that's where everything is. But there is a really cool book link where we have, for example, a cool set of bookmarks to guide your reading journey if you send us your receipt. I have some cool book club. If you're in a book club and want to use the book for that, a guide for you that includes some of my favorite recipes, Spotify playlist you can play in the background, my favorite candles you can burn, questions to guide you, just a fun little guide that you can get under that book, as well as the links to all of the major retailers where you can buy it. So you can find it everywhere, Amazon, all your normal places that you get books. And then the Audible, I did read the Audible, which I'm really excited about. So you can also listen if you're a book listener. I find a lot of women have become listeners of books more than readers even. So
yeah, that's so cool. I love all of your little goodies and the pieces that you put together too, which I think are really good. It kind of opens up the world of the author and lets people see inside. So I think that's really, really good. Well, the book is officially released today. This will be the day that the podcast is releasing today. So go grab a copy.
My due date.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. Share it with a friend. And then I'm sure Amy would love your feedback. So totally reach out to her and let her know how the book is affecting your life. I just really wanted to say thank you so much for coming on today. It was a pleasure to meet you. And thanks for letting me join you on your journey. I've learned a lot from our conversation today. So let us know how it goes. And I hope that the book it makes a powerful impact in the lives of those that read it. I know that your heart is in it. So truly, I offer you the best wishes and prayers for all the impact that, you can make in the world. So thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, friends. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. I had an amazing time. I learned so much from Amy about our thoughts and about her work as a habit finder coach, but also about her book and her heart for helping her community and circle grow and thrive. So we're looking forward to her having a successful launch. Pop over to amykemp.com if you get a chance. Check out the new book, download it on Audible or grab a copy on Amazon, whatever works for you. I'm sure she'd love to hear your feedback and your thoughts as she continues on this new author journey. I hope you have an amazing day. I'll see you later. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Entrusted to Lead podcast. This podcast was brought to you by our amazing producers at Wildfire Creative Company. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please hop over to iTunes or Spotify, subscribe, rate it, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. And make sure you come back. We'll talk more about the essence and elements of leadership on the first and third Thursday of every month. If you enjoyed today's show, you can head over to danitacummins.com/podcast and gain access to additional free resources. But make sure you subscribe to our newsletter so you can stay up to date on the latest shows. Have an amazing day. Talk to you soon.